Remember, one ought not take credit for his father's good deeds. Before we get to the linguistic part of this video, I think I have to adjust my theory just a little bit in light of new evidence. And this will be a recurring theme, I have no doubt. As new info comes in, I'm going to have to change what I believe. I will probably sometimes contradict myself, and there will be moments, I am sure, where I will laugh at myself for how stupid I must have been for believing this or that thing, okay? So this is just what it is. A learning process, basically. So we looked at this map in some previous videos, establishing basically that although all these Vandals and Slavs and East and West Goths and Alans weren't exactly the same, and that there were a lot of different influences like Celtic and Scandinavian, if you could even call it that, right? I'm using mostly terms that probably weren't used back then. It's pretty safe to say that these people were Slavic or Proto-Slavic for the most part, right? Because it seemed to be a loosely connected group of people that held these lands, and today these same people more or less still do hold these lands. And then I showed you, Charlotte of Mecklenburg and her claiming to be from a West Slav from the Vandal tribe, so on and so forth, right? And there's lots of evidence that the Vandals were not Germanic people they weren't German in the modern sense, because Germany didn't exist, right? Anyway, not till about 150 years ago. But when you look at this map, you got the West Goths down here, right? And then you got the East Goths. Did I say gods? Vandals, which, as I learned, were likely Vans and Alans mixed together. I don't know. Anyway, you see them there, right? This is 395 AD. And, it's probably a topic for another video, but suffice it to say, the chronology and the dates that we're being presented with have been heavily altered, so you kind of have to take all of them with a grain of salt. But we're just going to work with what we got, right? So then you have this German map from 526, and also, and I'm guessing one was based on the other, because you have one in English that's basically identical from the same year, where all of a sudden you have the kingdom of the West Goths in Spain, and then you have kingdom of the East Goths in Italy and modern day Romania, maybe over there somewhere, right? So what the hell happened to the lands they settled previously, right? This seems like not an expansion, but more of a migration, right? What did they do? They left all their wives and kids behind? Is that what happened? That doesn't make any sense, right? So it would seem that this was more of a migration rather than conquest. And, maybe one followed the other or was a result of the other. But, and the same goes for the Vandals, who were more or less here, right? And now they have their own kingdom in South Africa. And there's another map that puts, maybe I have it, that puts the Vandals in Spain also. I think, is this it? Anyway, I can't find it right now, but I swear I saw one that had the Vandals in Spain as well. Anyway, there it is. The Alans and the Vandals are in Spain, you see. And what year is this? So, 476. So, clearly these people couldn't have left their wives and children and houses and everything behind, right? If they went to war to conquer, this would have been part of their kingdom too, right? You would think. doesn't seem to make sense. And we're not told anything about any sort of struggle between any of these other people. Clearly, they migrated. Now, I was checking out. I don't know. This is what I think right now. I shouldn't speak in these absolutes. Okay, I'll try to do my best. Anyway, you should check out this video by Conspiracy R Us, which gave me some new ideas, where he talks about how these Roman buildings were destroyed as if, they were bombarded by modern weaponry or something like that. And also how they were digging up Roman buildings in England completely submerged and underground. So I'm wondering if there was some kind of a cataclysm, mud flood or whatever caused the mud flood, maybe a meteorite storm or something along those lines, right? That destroyed Rome, contributed to the destruction of Rome, weakened Rome, but also changed the weather completely or something like that, where these lands became uninhabitable, because you have more modern castles in Central and Eastern Europe that seem to have been built on foundations of something else and better technology, right? But that's another story. So it seems like this was more of a migration of these people. That seems to make more sense rather than just an outright conquest, right? Because they just move. Just because this map tells us that the slaves stayed behind, that could be a historical lie, because this just doesn't make sense, right? And we're not told anything about the Slavs chasing the Goths out, right? And Vandals being the Slavs too. I mean, how does all that fit in? So I don't know, but I feel compelled to change my thinking about this because in light of this new information, and I really encourage you to check out that video by Conspiracy R Us. It's quite eye-opening. It seems that something, well, Earth, but something caused major destruction up in the north, burying all these Roman structures and probably destroying some Gothic castles, you know what I mean? So anyway, the Goths, I guess we're gonna move on to the linguistic part of this video, and if you go check out Lang Focus, he'll explain to you why Portuguese sounds like Russian, or he'll explain to you the linguistic similarities insofar as the superficial sounds, right? Not the syntax or not the structure of the language, but just certain sounds that they share and how it works, basically. Very good video, very good explanation. And then you could read the comments, if you're a skeptic, of all the people saying, yeah, they do sound alike. I've always wondered this. Why is that? And he can't answer that question. So I'll take a stab at it, not to say that this is absolute, but it's, if we are to trust these maps at least to a degree, it's pretty clear what happened. But if you're still somewhat skeptical, I'm gonna say 4 different words and you tell me which one is Russian and which one is in Portuguese, all right? First one being Jansa. Which one? How about beige? How about jondlo? How about jaje? Which one? Portuguese or Russian? Neither. Polish. Now, the third one, which was staying in English, the most Polish people would say żądło. But if you're living somewhere around here, closer to Ukraine in Poland, you just might say żądło. Anyway, doesn't that sound superficially so Portuguese? Does it not? Why is that? Well, because I think the Swedes, right, who later became the Slavs, or they became a lot of things, it would seem, but proto-Slavs, right? I would go as far as saying Swiss, maybe even Proto-Swedish, right? But maybe that's another video. But anyway, you see them establishing a kingdom roughly where modern day Portugal is, right? A whole kingdom just to themselves, right? And the Vandals are in Spain too, at least for a little bit. But this Swabian kingdom seems to be there for a while. And it, you see the Suevi, right? The Swavians. And then you see them on this map too, and this map. And I know some of these maps are based on one another, but there they go again, right? 476 AD. I can't really read this one very well. Right? Suevi. Suevian kingdom. Now, look, Portuguese is a Latin language. That's the structure anyway, insofar as I understand it. And especially, because of the Celtic influence, especially maybe in that part of the Iberian Peninsula, it's mostly been influenced by that, right? And also Latin and all that. So the structure, it's an old language that has already been pretty much established, I would say, probably. And when these Slavs showed up, they already found a ready-made language, and that's why their influence was only really superficial. It had nothing to do, or very little, if anything, with what the words mean or how you order the words in the sentence insofar as, syntax goes. So they didn't have any much of an influence, if any, when it comes to the roots of the language, right? That's why the similarity is only very superficial, because they came later and, maybe someone influenced some of the people that were already there with their own language to pronounce it a little bit differently, right? And if you speak Spanish or Portuguese, you're probably pretty good at understanding one or the other, right? If you're Spanish Portuguese and if you're Portuguese Spanish, right? So they're very much sister languages. They're very similar to one another, but the tiny little bit of difference that's there, I would say, is no doubt to a Gaelic, right? Celtic influence, but the fact that it sounds a little bit like Russian or Polish here and there is probably due to the superficial influence of the Suebi people, right? That makes perfect sense to me. I don't know how else you would explain that, but I guess that's my video. And before I go, Jean se beige, Jean do Jadzi. Okay, I played it up a little bit that time, but I promise you those are Polish words, and yeah, I mean, it is what it is. If you have a better theory, you let me know. But I think this further substantiates the claim on top of all these other claims, or all this other evidence that I've been able to provide, that it's all out there. This would substantiate this claim that the Vandals and the Suebi were a Proto-Slavic people, and they spoke a language that's pretty similar to modern day Russian or Polish or what have you. All right, that's my video. Remember, try not to judge the son for his father's sins. Take care.